welcome to this episode of Quilting with Don. I am Don. If I'm stating the obvious, I apologize. Nevertheless, I'm going to, in this episode, make a Hawaiian shirt. We'll see how far I get. Chances are I'll do pretty well. I have spent the last week or so reading, Googling, and preparing to get ready to start cutting and sewing my Hawaiian shirt. So it's a great pattern from McCall's, and having read this in depth several times and Googling where I didn't quite understand terminology, I've learned quite a bit. It's a well-designed pattern. It really does explain very clearly how to cut fabric, how to lay it out for cutting it, how to sew it, how to manage your seams, and this is quite a bit different from seam management in quilting. And this is where it took me a bit of understanding, because where I thought I had some conflicts or contradictions in the pattern, I realized I don't. My seam allowances for garment making for this pattern are 5/8 of an inch. But after you've sewn it, then you use techniques to reduce those seam allowances, layering them if necessary, notching them, doing what you need to do so they go around curves. So I have read the pattern. I have washed my fabric. It's ready to go now. I will iron it before I start cutting it, but it got noticeably lighter after I washed it, which means that there must have been some sizing or something on this cotton fabric. That's cool. I have my fusible, what do we call it here? Interfacing. Yes, I have my interfacing ready to go, much more than I need. Then I have cut out the pieces of tissue paper I need for the pattern, that are the pattern. And I even just ironed them to make sure they're nice and flat. So I have pinned the first template, number 2 in the pattern, to the fabric. You'll notice that it's on the back side or the wrong side of the fabric, and I'm following, I'll do a close-up for you, the pattern layout that the instructions provide. And they make it very clear that you, in this particular case, you're putting the templates onto the back side of the fabric, but you'll also notice here I folded it in half, goods to goods, so I'm cutting 2 pieces or potentially 2 pieces of fabric each time. But this case, the fold is right along the bottom here, and purposefully you're not going to cut along this line, you're just going to cut out the rest, and then you will open up, and this is the back of the shirt. You'll also see on the pattern that there's some areas where you notch, little things here, and there's some dots you mark, notch, notch. And what that allows you to do then is line this up with the next piece of fabric we're going to sew. And I've cut it. You can see here, it's nice and straight. I used a ruler and a combination of that, and this rotary cutter here, and where did I put it here? Oh yes, and this rotary cutter here, this little guy, look at that. It was nice for doing on the curves here and here. I'll show you the first piece cut out. So there it is. It looks clearly like the back of a shirt. There it is. Da-da-da. Don't you just love that fabric with the parrots? And you notice I got the parrots in the right direction. Rather important, don't you think? I got the next 2 pieces pinned and ready to cut. The front, this goes under this, the front facing they call it. And then the front, one of the front sides. Of course, there's 2 of them here. And what I've done is I've lined the front facing along the fold, and I will cut that fold after because I need 2 pieces. And similarly, what I've done is the straight edge for the front of the shirt, I've made it even with the selvage, with the ruler to give me as a guide, so that I have a nice, true vertical positioning of that piece. All right, I've cut all the fabric except for the pocket, and this is going to get a pocket on the left side of the front of the shirt, left breast, if you will. So here's the reverse side of the left breast, and while you may not be able to see it, the lining up marks for the pockets are at the end of my fingertips. And here's the pocket cut out here. So what I want to do is, you can see it lines up. But what I want to do is have the fabric match on the pocket so that it blends into the shirt. Therefore, I've got to cut another piece of fabric with the mirroring or replicating exactly where the pocket's going to be on the underlying shirt. So the pocket, I've already marked the line-up points. There's one there, and there's one there. Okay, I have cut all the fabric and interfacing and fused the interfacing where I needed to on the fabric. The other thing I did is when I put the interfacing on, the pattern is very clear that you're cutting off some corners so that when you're putting, for example, the collar together, the points are going to be precise. If you had interfacing right into the point and beyond, it would be hard to make that point precise. Well, I forgot to do that. I forgot to clip off the corners of the interfacing as required, but it was simply a matter of using a needle or a pin and pulling up where I could the interfacing and then pulling it away. And it worked. So I am now ready to start sewing with my trusty Confidence Quilter sewing machine. It's got navy blue thread in it. I've already done a check, and I've even done a test sew of a couple pieces of fabric at 5/8 of an inch. So, and this is what you use for this pattern, it's always 5/8 of an inch. All right, I have done my first garment sewing, notwithstanding the dressing gown I made about a year ago. I finished the pocket, and I'll give you a close-up of it, but it came out all right. So, here we go. There's my pocket. Now, I learned a couple things doing it. I followed the instructions with a folding over the flap here, and then you tuck in the edges around the end here, and you even do some stitching. It was pretty cool. They did some extra basting here that you could pull on the threads and tuck in the corner. That was pretty cool. But what I also learned is that you have to have a nice precise edge on the top. So I ended up using a ruler on the top edge, and then I marked where I was going to sew the stitching, the top that sews down that facing, because you could see it from the front. And if it wasn't nice and even and straight, and it wasn't the first time I did it, it was obvious. So I did an unsew and I sewed it, and there I have my pocket. It's an optical illusion, but the pocket is on the front of the shirt. There's the pocket. Isn't that cool how it blends right into the shirt? That's what I wanted. And Carolyn just came by and says, I'm impressed, which is, I think is really cool. And she even suggested I use a glue stick to baste it down so that which will be more accurate than pins. That way I can place it precisely and sew it. Top stitching the pocket that I have glued onto the front. Wish me luck. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but I'm going around the curve here, and I'm repositioning manually each time so that I get a nice even curve with the top stitching. I edge stitched it, while getting close, and then I added another stitch 1/4 inch in. It's all the way around. And you notice how beautifully the parrots blend in with the pocket. Yet, there it is. There's the pocket. Isn't that great? Now move on to step number 2, which is sewing the sides to the back. And I've already pinned it, ready to go. I'm lining up the notches, and I'm using a French seam. So I'm going to enclose my seam allowances using the 2-step process for the French seam. And I'm following what McCall's recommends on their website for how to do a French seam. 3/8 of an inch for the first, sewing wrong sides together, trim it down to half of that, 3/16 or so, then iron it, fold it over on itself, and then you'll have the good sides together, and you do a 1/4 inch seam, which will encapsulate the previous seam allowances, and you have a nice finished seam on both inside and outside of the shirt. So that's what I'm doing. I thought I'd show you what the French seam looks like on the shirt. So here it is here. You can see that it's encapsulated. So it's finished, fully finished on the inside, as well as you'd expect, a nice finished seam on the outside. So here we are so far. And good news is, I think it's going to be just fine as far as fit goes. Isn't that a nice looking shirt? Yeah, I think it looks great. Working on the collar here, I thought I'd show you because you've not yet seen the interfacing. So there's a layer of interfacing on one piece of the collar. And what the pattern had me do, and I'm not exactly sure why, but it had me trim down to a reinforcing that I did at 5/8 of an inch on both sides, trim it down, and then trim the seam allowance to 3/8 of an inch. So that's what it looks like now. What the pattern has me do is attach or sew on the other half of the collar like that, but obviously it's going to be goods to goods. And you only sew around the parts, well, there, the bottom here, or which becomes the top. I've now got the main body of the shirt on the machine, and I'm adding a stay stitch around the open collar area. The point of this, and you have to be specific in which direction you're sewing, the point of this is to make sure that the collar will maintain its shape per the pattern and its length of seam as well, so that it fits properly with the collar I'm going to attach. So it's a 1/2 inch seam, or rather it's a seam 1/2 inch in from the edge, which will then get hidden by the actual garment seam when I stitch the collar on. So there we go. I just did what may be technically the most difficult thing. Well, I see that now. I haven't finished the shirt yet. But I just basted the collar onto the shirt, and we actually do to the good side for reasons I don't yet quite understand. But I basted it on per the instructions, and it was like doing a drunkard's path. It was like doing a curved seam. I had to do some unsewing because I noticed that the first time I basted it, it wasn't quite even, and I had flippies. I missed some fabric. So it was not hard to unsew and rebase, and it is basting. So I imagine somewhere, somehow, it's going to get sewed down a little harder than just a basting stitch. Following the directions, I have pinned this facing, good side down, to the good side of the collar and the leading edge of the shirt. So following the instructions on the pattern, I notched the facing so that it fits flush where I'm going to sew to the collar. Update. I've been busy since you last saw me. First of all, you'll notice I'm now wearing, I don't know if you can see it here, I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And the answer to that is simple. Shout out to my buddy Josh, who beat me to wearing Hawaiian shirts this year. We were at a band practice just a few days ago, and he wore a Hawaiian shirt. So, I have to start wearing them now. I was going to wear them anyway, and of course it fits with the theme of this video. So, moving right along, I'm going to now show you what I did with the collar. So here we are. You can see that I have finished the collar, and what I did, it was follow the instructions and sewed along the seam as required after I had done the basting, and then I had to hand finish the seam where the collar flips in to the back of the shirt. So I did what they call a slip stitch or a ladder stitch or something like that, but it worked. And so now I have a finished collar, and you can see over here there's the facing that it comes in on one side and on the other. And if I flip it over, you can see it looks, whoop, sorry about that, it looks like it should. It's a little wrinkly because the fabric is poofy, but I have a collar. Isn't that a great? All right, so the next thing I did, I had a busy day yesterday, is I made my sleeves. So here's the sleeve. I have sewn the sleeves following the pattern, and I even did the hemming of the sleeves using the machine. So you'll see here a nice 3/4 inch hemmed seam with a 1/4 inch also rolled in underneath. Carolyn gave me an idea on how to do this. For rolling my seams, I used a card with a 1/4 inch line for doing the turn-in, and then a 3/4 inch line for the actual width of the hem. It worked great. It gave me nice crisp seams, nice smooth edges, and when I sewed them down on the sewing machine, you can see here that I actually used the thin part of the sewing machine with the rest of the foot gone so that I could fit the sleeve over. So it's a bunch of firsts for me. I've never done that with a sewing machine before. You don't usually do that for quilting. So there we are. So now, one other thing to show you. Yeah, because I say I've been busy. Get the camera out again here. So I have placed the first sleeve into the shirt following the directions. And here it is. So it took a lot of pinning, and I pinned goods to goods. The sleeve is on the inside and the shirt is on the outside, and you've got the hole. So now, all right, after considerable effort, I got the sleeves on, as you can see here. So the shirt is starting to look like a shirt. Yes, I'm holding it open because all I have left to do now is the lower hem and the buttons, and it's done. But check it out, it hangs quite nicely. So yeah, we're doing okay. Right, I have finished the shirt. So I'm gonna walk you through some of the details of the shirt, and then of course I'll do the grand reveal. So first of all, you can see here, I'll give you a close-up, the finished hem, double stitched with a nice even hem, and even basted along the bottom. I may remove that basting. Just chatted with Carolyn about that, and I'll give you a close-up. Not sure if I'm going to remove it just yet. I'll run through the wash and see how that works. But there it is. Nice, even basting. And you can even see here how the facing is stitched down at the edge. And again here, which is where the buttons and loopholes go, and then the whole edge is finished along the edge here. So that came out really good. And then, look at the buttons. You've got 5 buttons. You see 3 here, and 5 buttonholes. I used the buttonhole machine on the buttonhole attachment on the sewing machine, and it worked great. After a couple false starts, I had to do one unsew. Let me tell you, unsewing a buttonhole is not fun. But here's a close-up. And there we go. So I sewed, and I used the machine also. I set the sewing machine to sew the buttonholes back and forth, and then the buttons themselves back and forth, and there's the buttonhole. Obviously made sure that they matched up. Now, let's move to some other things. I'll move the shirt down here. Da-da-da. There we go. So now you can see some of the details with the sleeves and the collar. Sleeves are double sewn. So it's not a French seam. That was a little tricky, and in fact the pattern recommended not doing it. What I did is I sewed the main seam, and then I went and sewed a 1/4 inch towards the edge, and then clipped the seam allowance to that second seam, making it mostly a nice finished seam, and it lies flat, and it looks good. See, the shoulders are French seamed. And if you look at the collar, I'll again close up, You can see this is where I hand sewed the inside, but you can see on here the facing. It looks great, it looks finished. Carolyn even made the comment, this looks like a shirt you would buy. So I'll take that as a bonus, because it really looks well finished, well designed. And I'll say it again, the McCall pattern is brilliant because everything worked the first time. I was at a sew day at Nanoose Bay with Carolyn. She was doing some business there. And so I looked at the ladies' works as well. That was fun. But talked a little bit about the shirt, and I said to someone, you know, the pattern worked the first time. She said, "Ooh, that's rare." So I guess that's a good thing to have a pattern that works, and I can definitely recommend strongly. Ta-da! One finished Hawaiian shirt. Grand reveal. It came out great. Super happy with it. I'll do a quick pirouette. Da-da-da! You can see how it fits. It's a good length. I'm wearing it over top of jeans right now, but its normal wear will be over top of shorts because that's what I wear in the summer. So, like I said, this has been quite the adventure. I learned quite a bit, a lot of firsts, between seam allowances being different from quilting, buttons, interfacing, collars, hand sewing. There's a lot of things that I did either for the first time or got to practice, and it was great. But there was also good overlap in quilting skills. Again, seams, precision sewing, doing it right the first time, and where necessary, unsewing to make it right if you don't do it right the first time. You can't be afraid to do that to get a good quality product shirt. So having said that, you know me, I like to toast things. I recently got myself one of my all-time favorite beers ever. It's a Rochefort. This is an Abbey beer. This is made by Trappist monks in Belgium. A Rochefort 10 or 10. And it is, until recently, my absolute favorite beer in the world. Last Christmas I had another one that was actually beat it in score, I think. But it's, I got the right glass, I got the right beer, 12% alcohol by volume. But that's not why I drink it. That's just a yeehaw factor. It is because the flavor is absolutely stunning. Rich, dark, sweet, pairs with chocolate if you like. It is an incredible, remarkable beer. So, here is to quite the adventure in sewing for me. Can't call it quilting, even though it's quilting with Dawn. But like I say, I applied a lot of quilting experience to making my really first true garment top to bottom. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Quilting with Dawn. It really is sewing with Dawn. Hawaiian shirt. I had a fabulous time making it. Only a few little mishaps here and there that I didn't go into, but that's all part of the learning experience. So cheers. There's a reason this is one, if not my absolute favorite, number 2. And maybe my favorite again, it's so good.